Welcome into another edition of In Touch with Indiana Sports, powered by thehoosier.com, on three's Indiana Hoosiers website. Welcome in, welcome back. Hope you guys enjoyed the previous week, the weekend, whatever it is you may have taken part in. Glad to have you here on a Monday. If you are partaking in this video content on the day that it is released, if you're watching it on a different day of the week, we're glad to have you as well. But either way, it is a new week, and it's a new week of things to react to talk about. And I hope you guys will stick around for the ride. Got a lot of things to get into. We're going to talk quite a bit today about the NBA playoffs. I mean, that feels like it's definitely story numero uno, topic letter A, if that makes any sense. What do they call it? The top story. I'm thinking of something that it's like a news reference, story A, cycle A, whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Either way, the primary thing I feel like most people care about right now is what these Indiana Pacers are doing in the NBA playoffs. It's absolutely, my mind almost went to the word bizarre, but I don't think that's the most appropriate word to use when describing what the Indiana Pacers have been able to do this offseason yet again. Because, and you'll hear me talk about this with Tyler Smith here from Indy Sports Legends. He's going to join us later on to talk about what the Pacers have been able to do during this playoff run. But last season and this season with the Pacers, it's almost like a mirror image where they started off in the regular season very slowly, people kind of wondering what's going on. They figure their crap out midway through the year, and then they go on a deep playoff run. And, it's not ideal to have such a slow start in consecutive years, or any year for that matter. But to see them positioned where they are at this point in time, of course, recording this on a Sunday, the NBA playoffs will begin, or the NBA Eastern Conference Finals will begin on Wednesday. I mean, they're sitting at a 2-7 game series away. I saw somebody put this on social media the other day. If they go 8-6 in their next, 14 games, they'll be NBA champions for the first time in franchise history. And I know we don't talk a lot about the NBA on this show in particular, although it is called In Touch with Indiana Sports. We do focus primarily on Indiana Hoosiers football and basketball, but especially during the off times of the year for those sports, this is definitely when we take a closer look and pay closer attention to things like the Pacers. But if you're somebody who has been a lifelong Pacers fan, maybe you're somebody who lives in Indianapolis and you've been around it your entire life, or maybe you're somebody like my friend Dustin Schutte. I know he hasn't lived in Indianapolis his whole life, but he is probably somebody that he's definitely someone who falls into the camp of, Pacer, no matter how he's following the Pacers, no matter how good or bad they are doing. And so I'm very happy to see him being able to enjoy, him and any other Pacers diehard who's been able to enjoy this playoffs run. Because as somebody like me who is more of a Pacers casual, it's just been fun to sit back on the couch and really just take it in. I was doing sports betting with it for a while, ended up not doing so hot down the stretch with a few of my more recent bets. So we're putting the gambling to bed until we get around to college football season again. But that was a fun ride while it lasted. But either way, to be able to just kind of sit down, and I've not watched every game or every moment of what the Pacers have been able to do, but the few things that I have caught, like the comeback that they did in game 2 against the Cavs. I mean, I feel like those are moments that I never see happen to teams that I like to see succeed. And for them just be able to seize that opportunity, Tyrese Halliburton really just lock in and will the Pacers to victory on multiple occasions. I mean, there is zero reason why this particular team that they can't make it. I don't know if that makes perfect sense. Let's rewind and maybe rephrase that. This Indiana Pacers team has absolutely has the tools right now and the momentum right now to push all the way to winning an NBA Finals. And for some of you who hear that, you're probably wondering, well, what does your opinion have to do anything? You said you're just a Pacers casual, and that's true. But when you've seen how dominant they are, when you saw how dominant they were, I should say, against Cleveland in that second round or the quarterfinals or semifinals, excuse me, of the Eastern Conference, I mean, you don't just go into the heavy favorites arena 4 times or 3 times and win all 3 times. It doesn't matter whether or not they're at full strength. Yeah, I mean, I guess let me back that up a little bit too. Yes, it matters to an extent, but to be able to go to continuously find ways to win when there were multiple times in each game where you could have let it get away from you or let Cleveland make a comeback on you, that is something that the best teams are able to find ways to get out of those situations, and Indiana was able to do just that. And then you get to the home games that Indiana got to have and see the way that they bounced back in game 4. And you'll hear Tyler and I talk about this as well, so I won't go too in depth with it, but the 80-39 halftime score. I mean, again, to be able to have a half of basketball or a half of anything that is that good, there's definitely a little bit of luck involved when you have those sorts of stretches. But I think it's safe to say right now, to kind of bring all of this full circle, you don't just dominate the top team in the Eastern Conference and win the series 5-1. And I don't think you can call that a fluke. And now you're going to go head to head with the New York Knicks, one of the classic NBA rivalries. You're going to be underdogs at first. But, I mean, let's just think about it like this. Both the Pacers and the Knicks very well could have bowed out in the first round of the NBA playoffs. The Bucks had a few good showings, and if it weren't for some heroics from, I believe, Tyrese Halliburton once again in overtime, there's a chance that the Bucks retake momentum and find a way to win that series. The Knicks, did that go to 7 games with the Pistons in their opening round? That was definitely a series that New York did not expect to be as long as it was. But because both of these franchises have really good teams put together that don't bow out easily, and enough talent surrounding all of that, by the way, that's why you find both of them back in this position. And I know New York didn't make the ECF last year, but both Indiana and New York faced each other in the semis and went to 7 games. So either way, both these teams could have found themselves in the ECF last year. Of course, it was the Pacers, and they're going to be wanting to advance yet again, to advance to just their second NBA Finals in history. So this looks to be a promising series. I'm looking forward to checking out game 1 on Wednesday. Likely will be watching that as I'm going to sleep. That's typically what I've been doing with these NBA playoff games, especially the ones that are during the week and that are late. Thankfully, the Eastern Conference ones are usually earlier, or have been usually earlier in the evening. But I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what happens, because, I mean, there's no reason the Pacers can't go all the way. I've been saying this to people, not just on here, of course, but just talking in general, off the cuff, about the NBA. The amount of parity is ridiculous. And I think every team that's going to be, and I know as of this recording, game 7 of the Nuggets and the Thunder is going on right now. So whoever advances from that is included in this too. But of all the teams remaining, there's no reason any of them can't win the entire thing. So Pacers fans, especially those who are, I mean, you're all long suffering. No one's ever gotten to see an NBA title from this franchise. So very exciting. And we'll, I was going, so on my list of, I've got my little rundown in front of me. I was going to transition into the rest of this Pacers conversation, but I think I kind of want to go through the rest of what I've got and afterward move into the rest of our conversation with Tyler Smith, because I know that's what I did with Drew last week, and I kind of liked the format of the way I did that for last episode. I know I was going to say historically, as if this show's been around for 15 years, but traditionally, I bring on the guest early in the show, and maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll go back to doing that if it seems to fit in more naturally. But I kind of like the way things are flowing right now, and I don't want to disrupt the flow of how the show is going. It kind of feels like I'm patting myself on the back, and maybe I am. I'm not trying to come off that way, but maybe maybe it is. But I kind of want to keep the ball rolling and get through whatever else I've got on here, and then we'll get into Tyler Smith and the rest of this conversation about the NBA playoffs. So if you're coming here and you're wanting to exclusively hear talk on the Pacers, I would just say skedaddle on through the rest of the show, maybe skip ahead about 15 to 20 minutes. I don't know how much longer it'll take for me to get through to it, but that will likely be our closing segment, our continued conversation on what's going on in the NBA playoffs. So until then, sit back, grab your own cup of coffee. I'm back to drinking mushroom coffee. I've talked about it. I don't know if it was on this show or Out of Touch. And this is not an advertisement, by the way. And if it ever was, I'd gladly advertise someone who sells mushroom coffee if it's good. But I like to drink mushroom coffee every now and again because it does not. I'm somebody who likes to drink coffee almost all day. And if you're a regular coffee drinker, you know that sometimes the extra acid in regular coffee it's not always good on the stomach. And so every once in a while, I get me a bag of mushroom coffee. And so unfortunately, it is a little more expensive than traditional coffee, but because I'm someone who likes to drink it throughout the day, it's a lot easier on the stomach. It's not as much caffeine, so it doesn't make me as jittery. And overall, it's just very smooth going down into the gullet. So that's what I'm drinking here on a Sunday, a little mushroom coffee. And some people might think, mushrooms in your coffee. Yeah, and it does kind of sound weird at first, but it's actually it's to me, at least this particular cup that I'm drinking right now, it's a very good combination, and it's supposed to be good for you. And I know everybody's sometimes people are weary about certain deviations, like for example, the veggie burgers, that sort of thing. I'm not somebody who dives into that particular thing, but that seems like a comparison to this. Maybe it's not a good one, who knows? But that's what I'm drinking right now, and I'm curious. I mean, you don't have to leave this in the comments if you don't want to, but if you've ever tried mushroom coffee, let me know. I'm curious if other people think it's if anybody else likes it, or if I'm just a weirdo drinking something that's not traditional coffee. But either way, after I just chased that squirrel for a second, let's go ahead and get into what else I've got planned for us today. And first up, I want to go over kind of the NFL schedules have been released for 2025. And that brings in another topic that I haven't talked a whole lot about in the first year of the show, and that's the Indianapolis Colts. And again, a lot of that due to last year, how awesome IU football had done and how mediocre or less than mediocre the Colts have been. But I would love to see a world where I can be excited about both the Hoosiers and the Colts. And honestly, before I even kind of get into what some of the schedule, what's in store for them, I don't feel like the Colts are set up for success. Once again, my friend Nick Coffey, who's a bigger Colts fan than I, and also if you're in the Louisville area, he's a big U of L sports guy. If you're into that sort of thing, maybe you're not on this show, of course, but he doesn't think the Colts really take their franchise very seriously right now. And I tend to agree with him. I mean, Anthony Richardson is somebody that, even though he's still young and maybe has time to develop into something that's better. I mean, when you were already deviating away from that and going with Joe Flacco, who is, at least in the few games I saw him playing, way out of his league. I've mentioned before, for those who are new to the show, my wife is a big Bills fan. And so I've kind of been, what's the word? Almost say grandfathered into this Bills fandom. That's not probably the word I'm looking for, but fan by association. We'll put that. We'll put it that way. Because I've never really been a massive Colts fan, always been kind of a passive Colts fan, so I can root for the Bills and enjoy it. So my wife and I went up to the Bills-Colts game last year as Bills fans. Sorry, Colts fans. But Joe Flacco just looked completely out of sorts throughout almost the entirety of that game. And to see that that's what this franchise is relying on when it comes to their man under center. I mean, they just seem like they can't get it right for some reason. They got it right for so many years with Peyton Manning and then Andrew Luck. And it was just unfortunate that Andrew Luck never had a good enough offensive line to really catapult his career into what everybody kind of thought it would be. And so now you've seen, I guess, kind of bad decision after bad decision. And so I don't really foresee Indianapolis taking a big enough step forward to be satisfied with where things are going. But hey, all that can change if things just click all of a sudden, and things can do that sometimes. Maybe we'll be talking differently about this franchise come this fall. But I don't tend to think much will change. But without further ado, let's take a look at what some of the early season may look like. And we'll look at kind of some of the highlighted matchups as well. But they're going to begin their season week 1 on a Thursday night football on the road against Baltimore. And there's no reason to think that the Colts will be favored. Well, not even think they won't be favored in that game. And Lamar Jackson and Baltimore, they're going to be on a mission because it kind of like Buffalo, they've just kind of always felt like they've been second or third fiddle to the Chiefs. And so they're going to be motivated to get out to a hot start in hopes to really improving their chances and really taking that next step forward for their franchise. So if Indianapolis was able to get an upset on the road at Baltimore to open the season, maybe you could say things are heading in the right direction for the Colts. But I don't think that's really the thing to be expecting out of Indianapolis in week 1. You'll follow that up against Green Bay at home. You'll have Cincinnati on the road in week 3. What else? Hold on. What am I thinking? I'm completely, I don't know if I just wasn't looking at the right thing. Those are the preseason games. So I guess let's rewind this. I'm sure some of you are screaming at me right now because you're like, John, what the hell are you talking about? These are preseason games. They don't mean anything. And you're true. You're right on that. I just didn't realize what I was looking at was the preseason games. So skipping ahead, things are a little bit brighter looking when you kind of see what the first couple of weeks are, really first 3 weeks. You have an opportunity to get off to a decent start for the Colts. First off, you're going to be at home against the Miami Dolphins, who have had injury-prone Tua Tagovailoa. And a lot of people thinking that their coach, for some reason, his name is escaping my mind. He may be on the hot seat heading into this year. And really kind of an important game for both franchises, if I may say so myself. So a good opportunity in week 1. I cannot believe I just went on about week 1 and the Ravens when that ends up not being the case. But again, better off for Indianapolis in this sense, right? So they'll have Dolphins week 1. Again, kind of a coin flip game, if you ask me. But if you can get that one, you have the Denver Broncos also at home in week 2. Both of those games on Sunday, by the way, not Thursday Night Football, like I had previously said about the preseason matchup. So opportunity to go 2-0. Broncos, they don't have, I can't even think of who their quarterback is right now. I know they had Russell Wilson for a bit, but I think he's the Steelers now. So after that, you get the Titans in division play on the road. Crucial if you want to win the division, of course. And a lot of people think the Titans, I mean, they're kind of a franchise trying to figure reestablish an identity, if you will. So chance to go 3-0 if you're Indianapolis and really create some momentum as the rest of the season gets underway. And I know I'm trying to see, there's a couple of primetime matchups that I think, maybe just one, that the Colts will be a part of this year. I see they have a Monday Night Football game. Is there anything else that is late in the no? So their only primetime matchup this year is where I just saw it a second ago. Here we go. You got Monday Night Football late in the season, week 16 against the 49ers. Fun fact, you'll have two new Indiana Hoosiers on that 49ers squad. Not sure how much time they will be seeing the field, being CJ West and Curtis Rourke. And if Brock Purdy is doing his thing, I highly doubt you'll see action from Curtis Rourke in that matchup. But it is late in the season, and if the 49ers are having a hell of a year, then maybe that would be a good opportunity for Curtis Rourke to get some reps. Maybe some IU fans would be apt to participate in going to see that game up at Lucas Oil Stadium. Unless I'm talking out of my rear end again and they're playing on the road, but no, that is at Lucas Oil Stadium. And they also got a very weird game in Week 10, November 9th. They're going to be playing in Olympic Stadium. Is this one of those overseas games? It's a 9:30 a.m. game, which makes me think it is one of those overseas games. And I kind of thought this is in Germany. So you have the Colts getting to play overseas in Europe. Not super uncommon to have at least one game in an obscure location like that nowadays, whether it be in Mexico or South America or, London or somewhere else over in Europe, like in Germany, where the Colts will be playing. That'll be against the Falcons in Week 10. But really, other than that, I'm curious too, how many people right now are excited for the Colts? I don't think a lot of people are. I think a lot of people are just kind of waiting to see how things play out with Anthony Richardson if they end up having to move on and find someone else. I know a lot of people from the get-go when the Colts drafted Anthony Richardson were very underwhelmed. And I can't imagine that a lot of people's minds have been changed so far with what has happened. I mean, to have himself, asked to be pulled out, I think that's what happened, right? He asked to be pulled out of a game. And then after that point got benched for a few games. That's when Joe Flacco, that's when all that began. And he's just kind of a very strange person to be a professional. I hate saying that. That's going to come off the wrong way. He's just not lived up to what was expected of him out of college. And I've also had people tell me that he wasn't even really that good of a quarterback at Florida. And the biggest reason that he was such a coveted quarterback was really just because of his build. He's never really been that good of an actual, thrower. He has a cannon of an arm, but he's never been, a true pro-style quarterback. He's just a powerful quarterback, if that makes any sense. So who knows? I think it's going to be judgment year for this portion, this current state of the Colts and their franchise. And like I said, they can definitely get off to a hot start with the way that the schedule sets up. You have 2 out of 3 home games in your first 3 matchups, and your one game on the road is against arguably, potentially the worst team in the NFL this upcoming year. Who knows? So chances will be there to create some momentum right now, as opposed to what I had previously said, where I was talking about the preseason matchups that I didn't realize were preseason matchups at the beginning. So we'll see what happens. Again, we'll see what happens. I just said the same thing twice. It'll be interesting to see how things play out in those first couple of weeks, and we'll see. I think that's about does it with the NFL stuff that I've got. I got a few other things I want to get into before we get into the rest of our Pacers conversation. I'll say this. I'm about to get into some Indiana baseball and Indiana softball updates. At the beginning of the season, I had said that I was hoping to be able to kind of track their seasons a lot more. Well, of course, the baby came along, and that kind of derailed that in a sense. And also, up until really the last couple of weekends, Indiana baseball had not been having the greatest of seasons, but thankfully, they were able to kind of have a really strong finish into the regular season, 31-23. And now they're heading into a new look Big Ten tournament with an opportunity to make some noise. They'll have Rutgers on, Tuesday, and then a matchup with Iowa on Friday. So, and again, I don't really know how this new Big Ten baseball tournament works. Again, I was hoping to have gotten somebody on that pays more close attention to the baseball side of things. But as we're still playing catch up, it's more so me just tracking how things have gone. But hey, good on the baseball Hoosiers for figuring things out late in the year. And shout out to Indiana softball for making the NCAA regional once again. They bowed out, unfortunately, in that regional. They lost their first round to Oklahoma State. They followed that up with a win against St. Louis and then lost once again to Oklahoma State. Looks like it was a run rule. And I don't know, for some reason, the run rule thing in college baseball, it's always, I say always, I don't think it's been around for that long. But it just feels so amateurish. But again, maybe it speeds up the game, so I kind of get it if you have games that are drawn out where, one team just can't stop scoring. So I get it from that aspect of things. But that's so Indiana softball ended the season 34-20. Overall, a solid season. Not necessarily the best season when it comes to conference play. They were 10-12, but a winning record nonetheless on the overall side of things. And we'll keep tracking baseball as they continue on through the postseason. And maybe they may or may not. I wouldn't expect them to make a run deep enough they're likely going to have to win the entire Big Ten baseball tournament to get into the NCAA regional round. But if they do that, that'll be fun to keep an eye on. But until then, we'll set that aside. Let's see. I'm gonna take another drink of coffee. And then I've got this next thing I'm gonna show to you guys. It's very what's the word? I was gonna say creepy, but that doesn't seem like the right word to describe it either. But I'm gonna go and pot up my internet volume here in just a second. So the IU Hoosiers on Twitter or X, they put this video out 4 days ago. And I've watched it a couple of times now, and I'm not going to play the entire 1:13 clip over audio because you don't have the visual element, you won't be able to tell exactly what is being played necessarily. But they posted this video, and I think it's football related, but maybe it's not because it was posted just to the general Indiana Hoosiers account, right? And I guess before I continue on blabbering about this, I'm going to let this clip play. And it's clearly like this is a scripted set, right? But I'm going to let this thing play, and I'll kind of share the rest of my thoughts on it after I let it play through.
Remember to turn out the lights. Remember to lock up. Whatever you do, don't touch that.
I got it.
No, he's serious. Don't touch that.
Stuck here all night, nothing else to do. I'll open that box if I want to.
And what just happened there, for those who haven't seen the clip, I'm going to go ahead and stop it right there. Jeremy Gray, who I believe is the IU guy who is portraying the character here, he goes up to this box that the other people were saying they can't go touch. And there's a part of the clip I didn't play, which is you kind of hear this snorting at the beginning. And he goes up to this box that they say he can't touch, and he has something that he can use to open it. And then something pops out of it, and he runs, and it's got a hand. At least it looks like a hand. And then something comes up on the screen that says to be continued. And I don't know what they are kind of teasing here. I've seen people say that they are alluding to bringing back the bison, like the bison mascot. Because I've seen, like, here, for example, somebody says, wait, bison have hooves, not hands, right? And everybody else is reacting to or assuming that this is bringing back the bison, I guess, mascot. And if that's the case, I think that's awesome. I don't really know if that's exactly what they're alluding. Also, at the very beginning of the video, it says December 16th, 2024. I guess maybe they're saying that that's the date that this happened. I don't really know what happened on December 16th. Is there something that happened that they're trying to make the connection here with? I don't know if that's the case or not, but either way, I hope that they are teasing a return of the Bison mascot. I don't know if people will. I feel like most people would love to see that happen, but there will be others who say Indiana doesn't need a mascot. We haven't had a mascot in I don't know how many years it's been, but you'll probably have a lot of the old heads. Excuse me if you're one of the old heads who watch the show. I appreciate you very much. But from my standpoint, I think it would be cool to see the Bison specifically come back, make a return in some way, shape, or form. Maybe it won't be like in a permanent mascot role. Maybe it'll be more of a temporary appearance basis type of thing. Because here's the other thing. There's going to be so many people on the outside of the Indiana, whether it be the football or the basketball program, that see the Bison and are going to wonder, why the hell is your mascot a Bison? You're not the Indiana Bison or the Indiana Buffaloes, any of that stuff. You're the Indiana Hoosiers. And so you'll probably a lot of people just making fun of it, and I'm sure that will be the case until their team gets ransacked by the Indiana Hoosiers and said Bison. But either way, I'm curious to see what this video actually means. And if you're somebody who is smarter than I or has a better inkling of a thought of what this might be, let me know in the comments below, and I'd be glad to humor you, because I don't have a clue what this means. As I've mentioned before, I'm not somebody who has any real connections with the university or anything like that. Like, I'm not here to promote any sort of thing like that. I'm just somebody who enjoys Indiana athletics and all that comes with it, when things are going right, of course, right? So I have just as much of a clue as many of you out there, I believe. So, all right, while we've got a few more minutes, a couple of things I want to mention, then we'll do some YouTube comments, then we'll do Tyler Smith, and then we'll get out of here. But let's see. The Indy 500 this upcoming weekend. And I'll be blunt. I'm not, even though this is, I'm somebody who lived in Indiana for a decent portion of my childhood. So I was about 11 years old. And I've always been in the, I'll call it the Kentuckiana area. For those who live in the deep south part of the state, I'm sure you know what I mean when I say the Kentuckiana area. Of course, the area combining both states. But now I live in Kentucky, and I've lived there for the most of my, again, since I've been 11 years old, now 27. It's weird. I always consider my heritage, if you will, because I have a lot of family in Indiana, to be in the state of Indiana. But it's weird knowing that I've now lived in Kentucky for most of my life now, because I don't ever think of it as such. I always feel like my Indiana is where my heart is, I guess. So that's always why it's weird to think about. But the Indy 500, I guess because I've always been in the southern part of the state, it's never really been something that piqued my interest. But I do know, for those that are around Indianapolis and up more in the northern parts of the state, or central Indiana specifically, I know that means a lot to everybody up there. So if you're somebody who's excited for the Indy 500 and that means a lot to you, enjoy it. I will, again, don't expect really much coverage about it on this show, because I couldn't tell you much about the drivers or anything like that. If there's plenty of other shows out there that if you want to hear Indy 500 talk, I'm sure you can find it. But I'll just leave that there, just so somebody's not in the comments saying, why are we talking Indy 500? That's why. And I don't really think I would expect somebody, especially those who have watched this show enough, to really wonder if I'm going to talk about that or not. But yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. Also, this is something, just again, a quick little thing that I had in my notes I wanted to mention. Pete Rose being posthumously entered into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Again, I'm not somebody who is super, like, I've not followed along with that. Like, I know that's a very massive talking point, especially when it comes to baseball fans. But when it comes to a strong opinion, one way or the other, I don't really have a side on where I think he should belong. But here, I will say this. I think the fact that you are including him in the Hall of Fame at all, and you're doing it after he passes away, I just think that's complete nonsense. Like if you've come to the conclusion that you think he should be in the Hall of Fame, why couldn't you have come to that conclusion sooner? Why did it take him passing away to enter him into the Baseball Hall of Fame, along with the shoeless guy? Is it shoeless Joe Jackson? If I'm butchering that name, forgive me, baseball fans. But it just seems very. I see why people are upset, like why it took so long. Like, I'm sure there are people who are happy about him finally being put in the Hall of Fame, but it should have happened while he was around, because there were so many. We wouldn't have spent all those years arguing about whether or not he deserved it. At least I don't think we would still be arguing about it if they had just come to a decision on it while he was alive. So just wanted to throw that out there because I knew that was something that was a big piece of news throughout last week at some point. And all these things, as I always mention, or as I always say on the show, feel free to leave a comment on it on the YouTubes. And as I'm about ready to do now, we'll dive into some of those said comments on next week's edition of the show. But without further ado, I do want to get into a couple of comments, and then we'll get into our segment with Tyler Smith and wrap this thing up. First of all, Ryan Fulton, you got a couple of comments I'm going to read from you. He says, he corrects me, first of all. He said Blackman wasn't a one-and-done player, though. Thinks 3 because he was injured 1 year, if he remembers correctly. And then he also thinks that Noah Vonleh or Cody Zeller could be added to the assembly ball team. So for those, just to give some context, I was talking about the new addition of James Blackman Jr. To assembly ball this summer. I had mentioned, I guess, was James Blackman really not? Maybe he was a 2-year guy. I do remember the injury because I know he didn't play in the NCAA tournament. I guess during one of this, I guess he was a multi-year player. I think the reason I said that is probably because I was under the impression while he was playing that he would be a one and done before he got hurt. But hey, we all mess up things. But I appreciate you pointing that out to me, Ryan. He also says, do you do any other IU pods and videos? Nothing. So this is the only regular IU show that I'm a part of currently. I do make guest appearances on occasion on talking about the Hoosiers. And we haven't done this next show that I'm about to mention. I've mentioned it several times on here before. We haven't released an episode of Out of Touch in quite some time, featuring Mitchell Page and Dustin Schutte, good friends of mine and good friends of the show. But it's funny, like that's where the name of this show was derived from. Out of Touch came first. So Out of Touch is just kind of a variety, like kind of having fun podcast that all three of us have done. And we kind of used it as a way to just kind of enjoy each other's company, right? Because we don't really live near each other. And it's I feel like we had a good run of weekly episodes for a while. But really life just kind of, as it always does, life gets turned upside down for a lot of us, and things change. Mitchell had a baby about a year ago. Dustin's always moving around. He's been a traveling nomad for quite some time. And then now, of course, I've had my own child. So we're eventually going to get around to doing more episodes of Out of Touch. And I don't know if they're never going to be weekly, I don't imagine anymore. I think I mentioned this before too. We were planning on doing an Out of Touch episode the day that ended up being the day that my wife got induced into labor. So that ended up getting shelved once again. So we'll have that here in the future, especially if you just like the non-sports talk. But I appreciate you commenting as always. Actually, I don't know if Ryan, I don't think I've ever seen you in the comment section before, but I always appreciate the comments, and thank you for participating. I want to throw this other one out here too. Kevin House says, he's responding to when I read the letter from, I don't remember, it was Rob something. It was the guy who had the issue with Jeff Goodman, but he had signed Sic Semper Tyrannis. Kevin mentions that it's Latin for thus always to tyrants. John Wilkes Booth yelled it immediately after he shot Abraham Lincoln. Hey, thank you for educating me, because I wouldn't have looked that up myself. And again, it was probably his way in saying that there's no reason we should accept this, I guess, quote unquote, tyranny from somebody like Jeff Goodman, who tries to kind of control the narratives all of the time when it comes to college basketball. So thank you for the comment, Kevin. And shout out to everybody else who always comments too. I don't always like to read the ones that are compliments to me, but I do appreciate those as well. Also, I'll throw Ryan. He did do a trifecta of comments. I do want to throw this one out there too. He says Woody was filling up with mixed gas when it was a 4 cycle. That's a good one. I like that. So yeah, again, if you want to participate in the comments section, again, also I mentioned this too last week, and I'll throw that out there once again, just because I do want to hear input. And if people don't give input on this, I'll assume people don't want this to return. But I was thinking about bringing back the hotline where you can leave voicemails, and I'll play the voicemails on the show as opposed to just doing the YouTube comments. But if you would like that to return, again, voice that in the comments, and I'll just assume that nobody wants that to return if people don't mention that. So, all right. Without further ado, I think we're going to go ahead and bring on the one and only Tyler Smith, get back into our conversation about the NBA playoffs, and then on the other side, we'll wrap this thing up and call it a week. So let's go ahead and get back into our conversation about the NBA playoffs and the Indiana Pacers. All right, joining us once again from Indy Sports Legends, it is Tyler Smith, covers the Indiana Pacers. And I was just telling you right before we got rolling with this recording that at the beginning of the year, I don't think myself and probably many other casual Pacer fans would have ever expected them to be heading back to the Eastern Conference Finals for the second time in a row and have a real chance at not only getting to the finals, but with the way they're playing, it kind of feels like the sky is the limit right now. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. Just kind of what have you enjoyed when it comes to how the Pacers have really, I mean, they dominated the Cavaliers. I don't think anybody expected them to. I mean, the Cavs didn't win a game on their home floor. So I'll throw it over to you. I just want to hear your initial thoughts on how things have gone.
Well, I think ever since last year, this team has been on a mission to prove it wasn't a fluke. But even the diehard Pacer fans will admit that they had some injury luck last year, the teams that they played to get to where they were going. At the same time, it's a very talented team. That experience helped them a lot. For me personally, I think this year I kind of expected them to have a good season and win a round and then maybe make some noise in the second round. But the fact that they've won the 2 rounds, they did it convincingly. They did it against a really good team. And as you said, now they have a chance. I mean, this isn't like last year where it's like, hopefully they win a game or 2 against Boston. This is a legit opportunity to become NBA champions for the first time. I mean, it's right there for the taking. It's wild to think about, but that is an actual possibility right now.
And this might be an obvious setup or an obvious question, but in the games that I've watched, Tyrese Halliburton, to me, he has the level of confidence that I feel like a lot of the elite players have always had. I said that he kind of looked like vintage Steph Curry, and that may be a weird thing to say. It's not like Steph Curry's super old or anything like that, but he plays with the sort of like he's willed Indiana to victory several times. What do you think of really how he's performed so far, and do you think that that's can carry over into this next series and potentially into the finals if they make it that far?
Yeah, he's been one of the most clutch players in the NBA. I have an entire article dedicated to it's called the Halliburton History Tracker. All the records that he's broken the last couple years. I mean, it's really impressive. The thing is, very occasionally he'll have a clunker where he's not very aggressive, and for whatever reason,
like game 3 was very weird. Yeah. Only 4 points.
Yeah, but what happens is when a game like that happens, all the media, all the fans, like, he's not a real star, he's a no-show, and it's like, just wait till the next game, because it seems like once every maybe month or so he has one of those games where he's kind of a no-show, and then what did he do in the next couple games to knock a 64-win team out? I mean, that's what he does. He is the entire system. He's an incredible player. And I think some people think that since he doesn't have the maybe get to the rim type of bag that some superstars have, that they think he's not a superstar. But I assure you, the way he impacts the game is superstar level.
Well, outside of Halliburton, what do you make of kind of the rest of the supporting cast? Because, of course, you wouldn't be able to make it as far as they have without having, I guess, a cavalcade of talent around him. I think a lot of players have kind of been able to have their moments. Pascal Siakam, Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nembhard, you just name whoever the hell you want. It seems like they've had their each individual moments so far throughout this NBA playoffs. Who do you kind of see as being the main number two if they're going to continue on, and just maybe some other guys that you look to continue to perform well as the series continues?
Well, it's got to be Siakam. It probably will be Siakam. He's the one with the experience. When they traded for him, they asked him to take on more of a vocal leadership type role, which he has done because he never really had to do that in the past. But, he's a guy that if he's getting his points and leading, then it's going to be huge. But for this team, it's always been a collective effort. And you hear Rick Carlisle talk about that all the time. I believe, if I remember correctly, this team has all 5 starters averaging like 14 or more points, which has never happened in 2 rounds of a playoffs ever. I mean, the collective effort's unbelievable. Even some of the people that have been in my mentions the last couple of years, and some of them are even Pacer fans, saying things like Nembhard and Nesmith are not championship level players. They are good players, but the Pacers have to address the backcourt and get like a real dog in there. And now some of those same people have been responding to me saying, these guys are dogs. These guys are getting it done on both ends. And, when they're healthy and clicking and the shots are falling, I think the whole world is now seeing how dangerous they can be. So Siakam as the number 2, but it's always a collective effort.
One thing I probably should ask this a little sooner, but in game 4, when they were up 80 to 39 at halftime.
Yeah.
What allowed that to come together, do you think? And I don't think that you're ever going to have that performance. That's a rarity to have not only that much scoring, but the lack of scoring from Cleveland in that game. What allowed everything to click? And do you think that was kind of the true turning point in that series?
Yeah, I believe game 4 was everything for this franchise. When all things considered, Cleveland got their guys back in game 3, wiped Indy off the court. It's 2-1. The narrative is, okay, their guys are back. Cleveland is clicking. They're going to win game 4, shift the series. And I wrote the day before game 4, that we're going to find out a lot about the Pacers in game 4, one way or the other. I wasn't predicting anything really. It was just, they're going to once again show the world that they bounce back from losses as they have the last 2 years. Or this is going to look like, we're going back to Cleveland 2-2. And to be up 80 to 39, I mean, it was one of the loudest few moments in that arena. And I've been doing it since 2014 with a lot of playoff games, a lot of great atmospheres. It was loud. It was impressive. I mean, Mark Boyle, the Pacers legendary radio guy, said, like, I don't know if I've ever had so much fun. And he's seen some things too over the years, but there's a video of his call at the end of the first half, and he's just like, Miles Turner, why not? Why not? I mean, he's just going nuts because everything's falling. Then you got Nesmith like falling out of bounds, hitting a shot, go up 41. I mean, it just clicked, and they thrive in those moments of trying to prove people wrong. That, like, yeah, we lost game 3, but watch this. Watch game 4.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy to see how things have really, I feel like the last 2 seasons, when you look at how things started and then how things progressed throughout the regular season, then you get to the playoffs, they've almost kind of mirrored each other in a sense, because both, if I remember correctly, both this year and last year were very slow starts to the regular season for the Pacers. You kind of get to the turn of the calendar year and they start to figure things out. They make the playoffs. And of course, now you find them once again in the Eastern Conference Finals. Last time they played New York in the round before, so that New York's excited to be in the Eastern Conference Finals, trying to get some revenge on Indiana. What's kind of your initial outlook on how things will go? Because we all know Indiana went 2-0 against Cleveland in the second round, but I'm sure it's going to be a lot more difficult to do that against the Knicks here in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, the good thing for Indiana is they just won a Game 7 at the Garden last year, so they're not intimidated by that building. This is the Knicks' first time in the conference finals since the year 2000, and
Wow.
that's the year the Pacers took them out to go to their one and only NBA Finals trip. And then 99, the year before that, the Knicks beat the Pacers. So the Pacers have won the last, I believe, 3 playoff matchups against the Knicks, and they're 5-3 overall. I'm really interested to see, though, how they match up, because a playoff series is all about, I think, 3 things. It's about health, it's about matchup, and it's about adjustments. And as of right now, going into it, both teams are healthy. Obviously, things can happen. I'm actually surprised more injuries don't happen. If you watch closely, like, these guys are flying around on every play, bodies flying everywhere. The physicality is unreal in the playoffs. But right now, they're both healthy, outside of Isaiah Jackson for the Pacers, who's been out all year. But then the matchup itself, I'm really intrigued. I don't really know. I don't really know how it's all going to fit. The Pacers have more depth. They can play 9, 10, or even 11 guys. The Knicks only play 7. So you'd think in a series, Pacers can wear them down. But that is a very good 7 for the Knicks. And as you said, they want revenge. It's Pacers still have a chip on their shoulder too, out to prove. And the NBA final trip is on the line. So there's no like maybe advantage Knicks because of the revenge factor with what's at stake for Indiana. But the Pacers have to use the depth to their advantage. They have to run. Rebounding is going to be key. Knicks are great rebounding, especially offensive rebounding. And if they're getting a bunch of second and third chance points, then that can kind of, nullify the Pacers wanting to get out and run. So if Pacers can get the rebound and run, then I like their chances. But I feel like this is going to be a war every single night, and we're not really going to know, even after game 1 or maybe even game 2, how they actually match up until we start seeing adjustments and all that stuff that goes with it.
Do you feel like at this point in time that the Pacers have more respect at this point than they did last year? Because of course they're going against the Celtics, who ended up winning the NBA Finals last year, so it's a little bit of a different scenario. But do you think from a national perspective that realistically you think Pacers could not only beat the Knicks here in the Eastern Conference Finals, but potentially find themselves winning the NBA Finals? I think it's kind of weird this year when you look at all the teams that are left. I don't think anybody would be surprised if any of them came out on top at this point in time.
Yeah, which is a cool thing. This will be I believe it's the 7th consecutive year that there will not be a repeat champ, or there'll be a new champion in the NBA. So that's good. It didn't used to be that way.
People were so sick of the super teams for so long, and now that era is long gone, it feels like.
Yeah. And, similar as what I said as far as after game 4, I noticed a shift finally, even in the national media, where that, national media were saying things like, man, these Pacers can really get up and run, or like, man, they're really tough, or wow, this is an exciting brand of basketball. They know how to respond. They got, this or that. And it's like, yeah, we've been watching that for a couple years now. But also, like, you still have some fans talking about, well, Cleveland was banged up, and that is true. They had some guys miss, Garland a couple games and was hobbled, and then some other guys missed a game. But like when they got healthy and it was, domination of game 4 and then game 5 and they're building, like, I feel like all the excuses went out the window, and that's a 64-win team we're talking about. So when you go 2-7 against a team and you go 0-5 in your home court against that team and 36-5 against the rest of the NBA on your home court, then some respect is probably deserved. So I can assure that the Knicks, and probably at least most of their fans, have some respect and know that it's going to be a battle playing Indiana this time.
And the one thing that's always weird about the Knicks, and I'm sure you get this with every franchise to an extent, but it always feels like it's more out in the open with New York. You have all of the celebrities that just kind of hang out on the sideline. They always show Ben Stiller. They always show a number of other guys. Do you think, I feel like there's always been this weird, I know Indiana and New York's a classic NBA rivalry. It's kind of always been like the farm boys versus the city boys, if you will. Do you think that always kind of plays into the underdog factor with the Pacers in this type of matchup?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even as I said, as they've won the last 3 and they've won 5 out of 8 or whatever it is all time,
they're always talked down that they're like they're the underdog, even if they end up winning the series.
Yeah. In this case, it's the 3 and 4 seeds. I think the Pacers almost caught them at the end of the year in the standings, and took them out in 7 last year on their court. But I think that's right where the Pacers want to be. It's like yeah, they've gained some respect, but if they want to, if you want to pick against them, then more fuel for the fire. And I saw, I think in 3 rounds, ESPN experts were like 0 and 32. Like every one of them picked the Lakers, every one of them picked the Celtics, every one of them picked the Cavs, and we know how that goes. So go ahead and pick the Knicks again. That's what Indy's hoping for.
It's very cool. I enjoy seeing the parity in the NBA, and I like seeing parity in all of the sports, to be honest. A lot of people like to make the argument that parity is bad for the sport. Do you kind of tend to think the opposite? And of course, this benefits the Pacers, the fact that they weren't favored to beat the Cavaliers. But overall, do you think more people are paying attention to the NBA playoffs right now? Because I certainly am. Part of it because it is the Pacers that are doing well, but overall, it does seem like it's more. It seems like there's more like fun to it because it's not just going to be, Celtics in 4 or Cavaliers in 4 like people may have expected it to be against the Knicks and the Pacers. Do you think this is better for the game, or do you think it's really not, doesn't make that much of a difference?
I think it's better. It probably depends on who you ask, but even in some other sports, like last year, it was Dodgers Yankees in the World Series, and some people loved it, some people hated it. But I think it's good at times when there are at least a couple big markets in the mix. So like I'm sure the NBA is fine that the Knicks are here, and they'd be fine if they make the finals. But that rivalry, and every once in a while you get a young team, and I throw the Thunder in this too, and Anthony Edwards, like it's a stars driven league, and so if there's intriguing storylines with the stars, then people are going to watch. So I think it'd be just fine in the ratings. And the world's hopefully seeing the Pacers as one of those teams that is up and coming and here to stay.
Now, as of we're recording this on a Sunday, this will come out on a Monday. Of course, Game 7 between the Nuggets and the Thunder will already be concluded. One of those teams will move on to face the Timberwolves. Who do you kind of foresee coming out of that side and making the NBA Finals if you've been paying attention to the West side of things?
I would probably lean towards whoever wins Game 7 will beat Minnesota. Minnesota's obviously incredibly dangerous. If you're a Pacer fan, you're probably rooting for Minnesota because if Indy does make it, Game 1 would be in Indianapolis, I believe. So that would be insane if that was the case. But I just think I know that Gordon is probably out for Denver, so they may not make it through, and if they do, they wouldn't have him. So Minnesota's fully capable, but I would guess the winner of Game 7 will win, but we'll see.
Now I know the NBA Finals, like the way that the home court advantage was, it used to be different. It was 2 at home for one, and then 4 in a row for the second team, and then 2 back at home. Is it still that format, or is it the traditional 2-2-1-1-1?
I think they went back to 2-2-1-1-1. So yeah, it was 2-3-2 for many years.
Or 2-3-2, excuse me.
Yeah, to reduce travel, and then also I know the NBA loved when it was kind of set up where they'd split the first 2, and then the team that gets the next 3 at home would win 2 of the 3. Yeah. So they would be up 3-2 going back. That's the format the NBA loved. I remember back, I think it was Kobe's last ring. They were down.
But it feels 3-2. Like you're giving. It's almost like you're giving the higher seed a disadvantage when you're doing that. So I could see why they would revert back to it.
Yeah, especially when you're like, you really need to win those first 2 games. So that's a lot of pressure on that home team.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was Kobe's last ring. They were up or down 3-2 to Boston, and went back home to LA and won the last 2. But yeah, I think the last, I don't know how many years, several years, they went back to 2-2-1-1-1. So that would give, that if the team that starts on the road could be up 3-2, they could have a chance to clinch on their home floor in Game 6, and then if not, go back for 7.
Any specific, like if there was something that is kind of obscure or out of the ordinary that would help the Pacers advance against the Knicks, like maybe that they didn't do, I guess, like for an example, with the way that they defeated the Cavs on their home floor every single time, if the Pacers were able to technically upset the Knicks, what's something that maybe fans wouldn't expect to see happen could maybe happen. Maybe I don't know if I asked that question the way that I wanted to, and if I didn't, that's totally on me. But if you do have an answer to it, then I guess I'd appreciate it.
Well, the things that go to my mind, they really need to split. Which again, they've been awesome on the road all playoffs, but
yeah,
winning in the Garden. I mean, yeah, they won Game 7 last year, but they lost the first 3 there. I don't think if they were to get down 2-0 this time that they'd be able to win 4 out of 5. But if they can split in New York, I think they're all of a sudden going to become favorites, just like that in the series. But as I mentioned earlier, the rebounding aspect, which is not like it's something that the eye test, like, oh, they're getting a lot of second chance points, but for Indy, it's one of those things where they don't even have to like necessarily dominate the boards or not give up any second chance points. They just have to be respectable, where that's something that can't destroy them. It's kind of like years ago, the Indiana Hoosiers, it's like, even if they shoot a decent amount of threes and make them, they're going to be good. They just can't go 2 for 31,
Yeah.
The Pacers just have to be respectable, getting defensive boards, because they're going to be able to score. They're going to be able to get to the paint against the Knicks. They're going to be able to run and wear them out, but they can't have those back-breaking, multiple chance, turns into a Knicks 3, Garden goes nuts kind of moments that just can kill them. So they got to get the boards.
Series tips off on Wednesday, 8 p.m. on TNT, I believe. So looking forward to checking that out. Looking forward to hopefully seeing the Pacers, do what they've done all playoffs so far, which is look like the more dominant team. So we'll see what happens. Tyler, I appreciate your time as always. And if they continue to move on, we'll probably check in once again.
Sounds good. Hope it happens.
Big thanks to Tyler Smith and all of his insight. He, of course, covers the Pacers a lot closer than I do. And again, just similar to Drew, if they continue to win, we'll check back in on how the Pacers are doing with them once again. And looking forward to seeing what happens throughout the series against the Knicks. Should be very fun and hopefully very competitive. That's going to do it for today. I need to mention this now because I did not do it at the beginning of the show. I should have. But subscribe not only right here on the YouTube channel, but subscribe to thehoosier.com. I believe they're still doing the deal where you can get the first month for $1 and then 50% off for the rest of the year. That is a steal if you are somebody who loves to keep up with the latest in recruiting and, of course, exclusive stories that only thehoosier.com will have, all that sorts of stuff. Go ahead and do it now because we are not far away from kicking things back off with football season. And we all know how awesome Indiana football was to keep track of last year. Things are looking to, of course, trend in that same direction in 2025. And of course, I'm hoping that's the case. I'm sure you are as well. And if you want to be a part of following along with that as closely as you can, hit that subscribe. I don't know if it's a subscribe button like on YouTube, but subscribe to thehoosier.com. And you'll get all sorts of good things from Kyler, from Alec, from Drew, from Zach, from Colin. I think Colin's with us. Maybe I'm wrong. I need to get used to our new additions to the staff of thehoosier.com. But either way, check out thehoosier.com if you haven't already. The site is awesome. If you loved everything that Hoosier Illustrated was doing back when we were with Hoosier Illustrated, it's all of that and more. And I'm sure many of you have already checked out and have subscribed. But if you haven't, do that. And also, we're getting close to 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube. I'm going to try to pull it up right now before we wrap things up. But we are very, very close to getting 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Yeah, we're less than 100 away. So if you're somebody who likes this show and all the other things that we put on this YouTube channel and you haven't subscribed yet, be one of the few people that will help us push us over the edge to 1,000 subscribers. So would appreciate that greatly. So until next week. Oh, last thing, because next week is Memorial Day and my wife and I will be out of town for the weekend, we will likely, almost certainly, be releasing next week's show on Tuesday as opposed to next Monday. So keep that in mind. If you get to Monday next week and you realize there's no show, it's because we're going to do it on Tuesday instead. So glad I remembered to mention that before we got out of here. So until then, This has been another edition of In Touch with Indiana Sports, powered by thehoosier.com.